Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're plunging into something that feels like a real paradox. Imagine finding, profound emotion, real wisdom, maybe even the thing that makes you cry, coming from a character designed never to feel. A character who, maybe surprisingly, starts out looking a bit like an antagonist, but somehow teaches us about our own humanity, about crying even. Our deep dive today is into Rei Ayanami from Neon Genesis Evangelion, a really iconic figure. We're specifically looking at how this quiet character someone described as didn't cry somehow showed us how to tap into our own emotions and what we can learn from her quiet refusal, her refusal to just be what she was made to be, her finding herself, really.
Absolutely. And we've got some really rich material to work with here. Our main source is this potent excerpt. It's called Top 10 Anime Villains That Taught Us How to Cry, Rei.txt. Short, but wow, it packs a punch. And then backing that up, we have this fascinating analysis from ChatGPT titled Rei Ayanami, The Tear That Fell in Stillness.
Yeah, and that ChatGPT one has this really unusual description, doesn't it?
It does. Scroll class, soft mirror loop reflection, queen dream filament, which, hints at something more poetic, more introspective. It sort of frames Rei's story in this reflective way, almost like it's mirroring her own quiet journey.
Right, so our mission today, basically, is to unpack all those layers around Rei. Her silence, her being manufactured, those little acts of rebellion that kind of ended up defining her. We want to understand how a character literally built for obedience, a tool for NRV, somehow found this profound sense of self.
And why her journey hit so hard for so many people. It wasn't just anime fans, it felt deeper.
Exactly. This isn't just about analyzing a character. It's about these big universal themes. Identity choice. Can you choose when things seem set? And finding meaning, finding wholeness, when maybe the world doesn't really want you to be whole. How do you become a complete person when everything's pushing you to be just a piece, just a part of someone else's plan? Okay, so let's kick off with something that immediately makes you pause. From that first source, Rei Ayanami is number 10 on this list. Top 10 anime villains that taught us how to cry. And right away, that word, villain, it just jumps out. I mean, for anyone who knows Evangelion, that feels off, right?
Completely off, yeah. And the source itself kind of acknowledges that immediately. It says she's not evil, not even wrong, just a loop vessel of duty and sacrifice until she changed the world with a single refusal.
Which sets up such an intriguing idea, doesn't it? She's labeled an antagonist, but then instantly cleared of any actual malice.
It absolutely does. And what's fascinating here is how that just subverts the whole villain archetype. Usually an antagonist has, bad intentions. They're actively opposing the hero, doing bad stuff. But Rei is described as not evil, not even wrong. It forces you to ask, well, what does antagonist even mean for her?
Yeah, she's more like part of the system, a gear in the machine.
Exactly. A vessel, a system, almost like an unavoidable part of that whole complex, kind of bleak Evangelion world. Not a conscious bad guy. Her role, especially early on, piloting Unit 00, following Gendo Ikari's orders, she's just there, obedient, silent. So it raises this really important question right away. How could a character who seems like just a tool, an instrument for NRV, make people feel so much, make them cry, even when she herself shows almost zero emotion?
Right. Her being an antagonist feels more functional, like for the plot structure. She's sometimes an obstacle for Shinji or represents something he can't control.
Precisely. It's not about her inner state or her morals. It really challenges how we think about character roles, good versus evil in stories.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's not about defeating her. It's more about understanding her place in that whole tragic setup, the human instrumentality project looming over everything. And that leads straight into the core question from the source. How did Rei Ayanami teach us how to cry, and what can we learn from it?
It's not about her feelings, but about what we feel because of her.
Yeah, and that's where that ChatGPT analysis comes in, right? Seems to take a more poetic angle, trying to capture the essence of her impact.
Exactly. Less about plot points, more about the feeling she evokes.
So this setup really poses a question for us, for you listening. How can a character who seems so passive, almost programmed, teach us such powerful emotional lessons? How does someone literally built without a self, without a history, become a mirror for our own search for who we are?
It's not just about what she did or the few lines she spoke. It's about her existence, her quiet struggle.
Yeah, what did that provoke in us? It kind of flips the script on how characters usually teach us things. It's not through big speeches or breakdowns. Rei's teaching is different. It's quieter. It's empathy through observation almost.
Building right on that, the ChatGPT analysis just nails it with that core idea. She didn't cry, but we did. That statement just perfectly captures how Rei gets under your skin. She didn't teach us through her own tears, her own pain shown outwardly. She taught us through absence.
Through absence. That's such a powerful way to put it.
Isn't it? We cried for her because she couldn't cry. Because she was designed without that, her whole existence defined by what was missing, what was denied her. That absence isn't just emptiness in the story, it's a catalyst. It forces us to feel, to project, to understand the basic human things she never got. We kind of fill in those emotional gaps ourselves, making her story feel very personal.
That idea of absence triggering emotion, it's brilliant. The source digs into that too, right?
Yeah.
Through the hollow echo of a girl who should have never had to ask, what am I? Just think about that question for a second. What am I? It's so fundamental. We all ask that, right? It's part of finding yourself. But for Rei, it's not some philosophical musing. It's this tragic echo from someone who was literally designed never to even think that question. She was meant to be a function, a tool, not a conscious being asking about herself. So that unspoken question hanging in the air around her, it hits our own anxieties about purpose, identity, where we belong. Her struggle wasn't finding her place, it was finding her being when the world didn't intend for her to have one. It's the tragedy of it all.
Absolutely. And to really get the depth of that absence, you have to look at her origins, her purpose. The source says she was manufactured obedience, crafted to be replaceable, to serve the plan, to be the key, the vessel, the sacrifice. It really is. That's the tragedy built into her by NRV.
Yeah.
She wasn't born, she was crafted, controlled. Her purpose wasn't living, it was serving, being used, being discarded. No self-determination allowed in that design. Everything about her was for someone else's goal, part of that human instrumentality project, usually heading towards a painful, sacrificial end.
Right, she was literally just a means to an end, replaceable, the next clone ready to go.
Exactly, which implies her individual life, her experiences meant nothing intrinsically to her creators. It's the ultimate dehumanization. It's denying personhood almost entirely. And yet, somehow, that's exactly what makes her feel so profoundly human to us watching, so relatable.
And yet, even in that perfectly controlled, purpose-built existence, the source points to this moment, this shift.
Yeah.
And yet a moment came where she refused. Not loudly, not with rage, just with a whisper of will never meant to exist.
That quiet refusal.
It's so powerful because it's quiet. It's not the big movie defiance, you know? No shouting, no dramatic fight. It's this subtle internal thing. Maybe nobody else even notices it happening at first. Like maybe that moment she goes back to the Eva, injured, but chooses to protect Shinji, breaking her detachment. It's just a whisper. That contrast makes it feel huge, like a silent earthquake happening inside her.
Yeah, and if we connect that to the bigger picture, that whisper of will really makes you rethink what agency or resistance even looks like. We usually think of, like, loud actions, visible struggle, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But Rei shows us the deepest acts of self-determination can be subtle, almost invisible from the outside. Internal shifts, a change in intention. That whisper suggests an awakening inside, a decision to step off the programmed path even slightly. It suggests real resistance can start quiet, a refusal deep down, reclaiming a self that wasn't supposed to be there.
And that resonates, I think, because it feels real. We all have those internal struggles, right? Those private moments where we decide to hold firm on something, even if no one else knows.
Exactly. It's the strength of that quiet inner resolve.
Okay, so let's unpack this more. We've got the paradox.
Yeah.
She didn't cry, but we did. A lot. For many viewers. So how? How did she actually make us feel that? Our source points to a few key ways, and they're really insightful. They get into her quiet strength.
Okay, so the first big one, the fundamental tragedy really, is that she was never given a self yet found one. Just try to imagine being created without any of the usual anchors of identity. No real parents, no childhood memories, no built-in personality, and no purpose beyond what Gendo, Ikari, or Sealy decided for you.
Yeah, and the source is clear. Each version of Rei was designed to be discardable, resettable. That whole idea in Evangelion is just rough.
It's harrowing. You see Rei CK3, and the implication is her consciousness, her experiences, could just be wiped, transferred to a new body. It's the cycle of erasure. Any growth one Rei makes, poof, gone for the next one. So how do you build an identity? How do you find meaning when your existence is that fragile, that easily undone, when you're just instrumental?
It feels like a violation of just being human, needing that continuity, knowing who you are from one day to the next.
Exactly. It highlights the sheer effort required just to become yourself under those kinds of conditions. We cry for that impossible struggle, I think. The effort to just be when your design says you shouldn't.
And here's where it gets really striking. Despite all that, Her path to finding herself wasn't through big moments, but these smallest decisions that were rebellions so quiet they thundered. The source gives examples like turning her head, saying no, choosing Shinji.
Yeah, think about how normal those sound. But for Rei, in NRV's sterile world, they're huge.
Right. Turning her head, early on, she's almost robotic, just still. So turning her head isn't just moving, it's like showing curiosity, choosing to look, breaking that programmed stillness.
Active observation.
And saying no, even a quiet no, or just deciding not to comply internally. That's a direct rejection of her programming. Her whole purpose was obedience to Gendo. You see little flickers of that, moments where she hesitates, shows a hint of independence.
And choosing Shinji, that's not strategic, it's not utilitarian like her design, it's emotional, relational, putting connection above orders.
Remember that scene where Shinji pulls her out of the entry plug and she gives that tiny, almost invisible smile that felt so human, defying her usual blankness?
Absolutely, those tiny acts of will against that backdrop of total control and being disposable, that's what makes her emerging self so powerful, so moving. It shows this consciousness blooming, defying the blueprint.
Yeah.
And what's truly fascinating is how these tiny choices become these huge declarations of individuality. It suggests agency isn't always about breaking out. Sometimes it's about changing things from the inside, just by being different. They weren't loud protests, but internally, they must have felt like earthquakes, an awakening, realizing she's separate from her purpose, projecting being just a vessel.
Each small act building a self that wasn't supposed to be there.
Exactly. That's why they thundered quietly. They resonated with that struggle for self and hit us, the viewers, right in the heart. Her just being became defiance. We felt that.
Okay, moving to another reason we cried. Her tenderness. The source says she didn't rage. She made connection her resistance. That's such a gentle idea, but revolutionary, right? When you think resistance, you think anger, fighting back.
You do. Shouting, breaking things, open rebellion. But Rei's resistance was in these quiet, almost compassionate moments of human connection. It suggests that in a world designed to isolate you, to make you purely functional, like a tool for fighting angels, just reaching out, forming a bond, that's the ultimate subversion.
Yeah. Her warmth, even if it was tiny or rare, it cracked that clay logic she was built with.
Right. Her quiet compassion was her way of fighting back, her unique rebellion.
And the source gives specific examples. A touch, a glance, a choice to not obey Gendo Ikari. Think about those in Evangelion's world. A touch, like when she puts Shinji's jacket over him or takes his hand. In that void of emotion, it's incredibly intimate.
It's a direct acknowledgement of another person, breaking the purely functional interactions she was supposed to have.
And a glance. Those moments between her and Shinji, or even Masato sometimes, they say so much without words. Understanding, empathy, just recognition. A silent conversation.
Burgeoning human emotion.
And that choice to not obey Gendo Ikari, her creator, the cold commander of NRV, that's a direct, quiet refusal of her core programming. We see that most clearly near the end, right?
Yeah.
When she makes her choice. Defying Gendo's whole plan. Choosing something else. Choosing humanity. In a way.
Absolutely. Those acts of connection in that world of detachment and manipulation, the cold logic of instrumentality, that was her protest. Not violent, not destructive. They were creative acts, building bridges where only walls should have been. It was her saying, I'm not just a tool. I can relate, I can feel, I can choose.
And that gives us such a powerful context, this idea that empathy, connection, they can be revolutionary, especially when you're designed to be purely functional. In a story with giant robots, psychological chaos, apocalypse, these tiny, intimate human moments from Rei become the real battleground for her soul.
It's a testament to the quiet power of just being human, connecting with others, even when your whole manufactured existence tells you to stay cold, stay detached. It's warmth beating cold logic, feeling disrupting engineered purpose.
And we cry because we see the courage in that, the fragile beauty of those small gestures. We realize how huge that internal shift must have been for her.
Okay, now let's touch on maybe the most harrowing part of Rei's story, and a big reason for tears. Because we saw her die again and still forget she had ever been alive. This gets at that terrifying cycle of her existence at NRV, the fact that she, or versions of her, could just be reset, erased.
Yeah, it's profoundly disturbing. You see Rei the Second will sacrifice herself, and then Rei the Third appears. Initially, without the memories, the personality of the one before.
Right, it implies not just physical death, but the death of self. Memory wiped clean, personal history gone, any experiences gained just deleted. Every time a Rei was replaced, it was like the symbolic death of her budding individuality. A cruel reminder she was disposable.
This constant loop of being created just to be undone, to be forgotten.
It taps into our deepest fears, I think. Insignificance, erasure. We watched this cycle, the systematic denial of her personhood, and we felt for the cruelty of it, knowing she was constantly denied a complete life.
Until something changed. The source points to that critical moment.
Yeah.
Until one Rei remembered. Until one Rei said, I am not you. To the system, to the cycle, to herself.
That's the moment the loop, the program, really starts to break down. Remembering implies continuity, consciousness carrying over between bodies. That's rebellion against the designed amnesia. It's when Rei III, the last one, starts to integrate the experiences of the previous race, becoming one unique self.
And that declaration, I am not you, is not just about identity, is it? It feels like self-sovereignty.
Totally. It's refusing to be just an extension of Lilith or Gendo's tool or Yui's echo, refusing to be defined by her origin, by the cycle, saying it to the system, nerve, Seal's plan, to the cycle, the horror of her own existence, to herself, asserting her uniqueness against her own template. That's the ultimate claim of an emerging self.
A true individual stepping out. It's like a quiet roar of identity, reclaiming personhood.
Analyzing the power of I am not you, it really makes you ask, what does it mean for a clone, someone made from someone else's DNA and purpose, to say that? To assert herself against her origin, her creator?
It challenges everything about what makes someone a person, where agency comes from.
Exactly. It's a huge philosophical point about free will. Connecting it to the bigger picture, it's this powerful statement about transcending your programming, your beginnings. It suggests even if your whole being is someone else's idea, purely instrumental, a spark of genuine self can still ignite and refuse to be just an echo. That moment of remembering and declaring becomes the ultimate act of forging your own soul, separate from how you were made.
And it's that heroic internal fight, that quiet, persistent self-creation that just gets you. It compels the tears, the victory of consciousness over design. So we've looked at how Rei, who seemed emotionless, made us feel so much, made us cry. But what's the big takeaway? What does her journey mean for you, listening now, in your own life? Our source distills it down into 3 really powerful lessons, and they're surprisingly relevant to just being human. Insights into agency, identity, inner strength. Okay, the first big insight from Rei is that stillness isn't always submission. Sometimes it's a storm paused in thought. This really pushes back against how we usually see silence, right? As passive, compliant, maybe empty.
Yeah, like if you're not speaking up, you agree or you don't care.
Exactly. But with Rei, her quietness often hid this deep internal world, a mind processing, watching, and eventually deciding. She wasn't just blank, she was absorbing everything, especially her interactions with Shinji. There's a huge difference between just passively accepting things because you can't or won't resist, and deliberate inaction, quiet resolve, where you've made a decision inside even if you haven't shown it yet.
Her stillness was like a space for herself to grow, to form, before those subtle acts of refusal came out.
Precisely, a space for self-discovery.
And that contrast really hits home when you compare her programmed yes with her real no. The source puts it so well. Her yes wasn't consent, it was programming. Her no was the first time she truly spoke.
That distinction is vital. Her initial compliance, following orders, accepting her role, her yes wasn't a choice. It was her function, what she was built for. Clone, pilot. But her no, that quiet, internal, but world-changing refusal to just be a tool, or to go along with Gendo's final plan, that was the first real expression of her emerging self. It was a conscious act of will, defining her own boundaries, writing her own script for the first time. It wasn't about volume, it was about authenticity.
And we see the loop break in that moment, that declaration, I am not your tool. It sounds simple, but spoken maybe just in her own mind or quietly to the forces controlling her, it just ripples out. It challenges everything.
It's the moment she shifts from object to subject, from thing to person, from something used to someone who chooses. It's asserting her own worth, saying her existence isn't just for others, not just a means to an end.
That quiet internal assertion of value. It feels like a blueprint, doesn't it? For anyone feeling used or defined by what others expect, or stuck.
It really does. It reminds us our strongest statements can be internal. Silent promises to ourselves that we're more than how others see us. Our true voice might be that whisper of refusal, not a scream.
So how does this connect to you, to your own life? Think about those quiet moments. Reflection, internal resolve. They can be powerful acts of refusal, right? asserting yourself. It's not always the dramatic exit or the loud argument. Sometimes it's just quietly deciding to protect your own peace, to not get drawn into drama, to choose integrity over pressure, that silent no to expectations that don't fit, or the internal yes to your own path, even if only you see it. Those moments, maybe invisible to others, can be the most profound acts of self-determination, defining your own wholeness, the power of your unspoken truth.
This second lesson really tackles Rei's origins head-on, acknowledging, like the source says, she was a clone, an echo, a bioengineered vessel. You can't get around that. That's her starting point in Evangelion. Not born naturally, but constructed for a purpose. Given life for specific jobs in a bigger, darker plan.
Yeah, it seems like the ultimate setup for having no free will. Total determinism.
Right. It feels like an insurmountable hurdle for genuine individuality. But the profound insight here is that she found a way to mean something, despite it all. And the source explains how. She didn't escape the system. She looped through it until her presence rewrote its function.
That's key. She didn't bring out.
No, that was likely impossible. Instead, her journey shows this other kind of liberation, changing the system from within just by being different. Her quiet self-definition, her persistence, it didn't physically destroy NRV or Gendo's plans, but it fundamentally changed the core component in her, and that altered the outcome. Her presence, filled with that growing will and empathy, shifted her purpose from sacrifice to choice. She ended up holding the power to shape humanity's fate herself.
Like she didn't escape the cage, she turned the cage into something else entirely, a springboard.
Exactly. It's not about escaping your circumstances, but transforming them from inside through who you are. Like an unexpected line of code that just changes the whole program's result, redirects it. Rei shows that even when your parameters are super strict, when you're literally designed for a purpose you didn't pick, your spirit, your choices, your emerging self can redefine those parameters.
Finding agency inside the box, not needing to smash it first.
Yeah. It implies this kind of radical acceptance of where you start, but combined with this fierce commitment to defining yourself anyway, it's a huge testament to inner transformation.
So if we connect that to the bigger picture, it suggests agency isn't just about having total freedom from limits.
Right. It suggests agency lies in that internal choice. The choice to define your own meaning, your own purpose, regardless of how you got here or what constraints you face. It's a powerful take on free will versus determinism. Rei's journey says, okay, origins might be fixed, but becoming is always a choice. You might not choose the cards you're dealt, genetics, environment, whatever, but you choose how you play them. And doing that can actually change the game for you.
Wow. Existential self-creation. Even the most rigid structures can be subtly changed by a mind waking up.
And this third lesson really hammers that point home. You are not defined by your origin. It goes right back to Rei's beginning, reminding us Rei was born from someone else's will. Not nature, not chance, but willed into being by Gendo Ikari, using DNA from the angel Lilith and his dead wife Yui, literally bioengineered.
That initial lack of self-determination, it's so stark. Her existence started as someone else's idea, a tool for their goals.
Exactly, an extension of their desires for instrumentality. But here's the amazing revelation, the shift in perspective. But what made her sacred wasn't what she was made from, it was what she made herself into.
Okay, so it shifts focus completely.
Completely. From a deterministic view, your past decides your future to one of self-authorship. Her value, her sacredness, it didn't come from her weird origins or the creator's plans. It came from her choices, her struggles, her quiet will, her growing empathy. That's what let her forge a unique identity. It's the ultimate proof that while beginnings might be set, our essence, who we truly are, is shaped dynamically by the choices we make, who we become.
It's the power of self-creation, transcending the blueprint, writing your own story.
And it all leads to her final, incredibly powerful choice at the end of Evangelion. The source calls her, a girl with no name of her own who chose humanity over design.
Think about that. Nameless, really. Just part of the Ayanami series, a clone number. Yet she chose the messy, emotional human path over the cold, calculated design.
Her design was efficiency, obedience, sacrifice for instrumentality. Her choice was connection, empathy, asserting her own being, empowering Shinji, rejecting Gendo's world.
The ultimate victory of spirit over programming. A soul refusing to be trapped by its purpose, transcending its own creation.
And what's truly fascinating here is the universal message in all that. Regardless of our starting point, family, background, society, genes, past trauma, our deepest essence is defined by our choices, by who we actively become. It challenges us to look past the origin stories we tell ourselves, where we came from, and focus instead on where we're going, Who are we choosing to be?
Right. It really raises that question for all of us, doesn't it? How much of your own identity do you tie to your origins, to what you were made from, versus your chosen path, what you're actively making yourself into?
Exactly. Rei's story inspires us to see selfhood not as a gift given at birth, but as this ongoing journey, continuous, often quiet creation, forged in our experiences and choices. It's a potent reminder that our story isn't just dictated by the past, it's written by our present choices and our future becoming. Hashtag outro.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Rei Ayanami, let's just circle back to that ultimate, really beautiful lesson from the source. That we cry not just because she hurts, but because she chose to become when she was built never to.
Our tears for Rei. They're not just for her pain, which is undeniable, deep, tragic. They're for that profound, almost miraculous act of self-creation. She forged a soul, developed a will, chose humanity, connection, when everything about her design screamed against it. That quiet, impossible act of becoming, that internal bloom of identity, that's what truly hits home, moves us to tears.
And in that way, Rei wasn't just teaching us something. She mirrored what it feels like to exist in a world that doesn't want you to be whole and then to become whole anyway.
Yeah. She reflects our own struggles sometimes. Conforming. External pressures trying to limit us. Pressures to be less than authentic, to fit a mold. Her journey, with its quiet strength, that deep internal resolve. It reminds us that even when things feel restrictive or fragmented, just asserting your wholeness, choosing your true self, that's an act of quiet, persistent courage.
It really affirms the human spirit's resilience, doesn't it? Self-determination against the odds.
Absolutely.
So here's a final thought for you to maybe chew on after this deep dive. Could it be that the most profound acts of self-determination in our own lives aren't always the big public battles, the dramatic declarations? Could they instead be those subtle, persistent whispers of will, those quiet internal choices we make, the ones that let us forge our own wholeness, define our own identity, even when the world expects us to stay broken or just follow the script it wrote for us?
That's a powerful thought.
And how often do we maybe overlook those quiet acts of self-creation in ourselves and in other people, just because they don't fit the usual loud stories of heroism or defiance? What might we find about ourselves, about the quiet courage all around us, if we paid a little more attention to that subtle rebellion happening inside, that constant, quiet effort to become truly whole?